Hey readers! In this video I want to talk about the snake or the serpent and what it means. Does it just symbolize evil or is it more than that? I want to get into the Bible, what the Bible has to say about it. And I also want to get into the Jungian perspective. So what does Carl Jung have to say about it? A few years ago I already did a video on this topic. I didn't really get into the Bible and it was just another perspective, but nonetheless also very interesting. But in this video it's just going to be biblical perspective and Jungian perspective. So let's start with the biblical perspective. What does the Bible say about the serpent? I found that the Bible is quite ambiguous about the serpent. So on one side the Bible describes the serpent as something evil, as the devil, as something that will hurt people or even kill people or deceive people. On the other side, the Bible describes the serpent as something with healing powers, something that expresses God, something that God uses as a tool. So let's get into these Bible verses. So first, the Bible verses that describe the serpent as something evil. I think we all know Genesis, the story of Genesis, in which the serpent deceives Eve. He tells her that she can eat the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and she will not die, she will be like God. But that was a lie. So in this part, the snake or the serpent is definitely something evil. Many people believe that that snake is in fact the devil himself, the devil disguised in the shape of a serpent. Later on in Revelations, in 2 different verses, then the serpent is literally called the devil. So yeah, there's definitely truth to that. And then in 2 Corinthians there's also this verse that talks about the serpent that deceived Eve. And in 1 Corinthians there's also a verse that talks about how people were destroyed by serpents. So in all these verses, the serpent is something evil, something bad. Then in the book of Luke, Jesus says that he gives us the authority to trample upon scorpions and serpents. So if the serpent would be a good creature, then why would Jesus say such a thing? And then in Matthew chapter 23, then when Jesus is ranting and when Jesus is very angry, he calls the Pharisees serpents and that they won't escape the condemnation of hell. So all these verses, they indicate that the serpent is an evil creature, that it means evil. However, in many parts of the Bible, the serpent is being used as something good, something with healing powers, something that expresses the power of God. So when we look into Exodus, there's this rod of Moses that changes into a serpent. So first, God tells Moses to throw his rod on the ground, and then God turns his rod into a serpent. And then he says that he needs to do this in front of Pharaoh to show the power of God. And then when he does that in front of Pharaoh, then the rod indeed changes into a serpent. And then the magicians, the wizards of Pharaoh, they do the same thing. But then the serpent of Moses eats the other serpents of the magicians. So yeah, in this case, is the serpent the devil? Is the serpent evil? No, the serpent expresses the power of God. And then in the book of Numbers, then Moses is in the desert with the people of Israel. And then God sends serpents among the people to bite the people, and then they died. But then God tells Moses to lift up a serpent on a stick or a pole, and only when people would look at that serpent, then they wouldn't die of the bites of the serpents on the ground. So Moses then lifted up a bronze serpent and people would actually look at it and they wouldn't die. And then in 2 Kings it says that the Israelites burned incense to the bronze serpent that Moses put on a stick, and they called it Nehustan. So would you burn incense to something that is the devil? Would you burn incense to something that is just evil? No, of course not. And then later on in the book of John, then Jesus says, just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up. What does this mean? When Moses lifted up that serpent, that bronze serpent, then it became a symbol of healing, a symbol of health, a symbol of life, so to say. People had to look at it. So you have to look the very thing that would otherwise kill you, you have to look it in the eye. You have to shine a light in the darkness in order to get rid of the darkness. So it's the same principle. As long as the snake is on the ground, it's kind of hidden, it's kind of in the darkness, you don't have control over it, it is unknown to you. But as soon as you lift up the thing that is threatening you, as soon as you lift up the thing that might kill you, as soon as you shine a light on the darkness and you look it into the eye, then it might actually save you. So this is the ambiguity of the snake. So on one hand, it can kill you, it is dangerous, it's like the devil, but on the other side, it is something with healing properties. It is something like Jesus himself, because Jesus compares himself to the snake on the pole. Jesus heals people and Jesus is life. Jesus compares himself to that serpent on the pole because of the healing properties, because of life. It gives life. So actually you could say that on one hand the serpent symbolizes the devil, but as soon as it is lifted up, as soon as you look it into the eye, as soon as you shine a light on it, then it even symbolizes God himself. It symbolizes Jesus, because Jesus was also like a serpent on the pole. Then in the book of Matthew, Jesus says that we should be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Wise as serpents, not evil as serpents. So the serpent has different qualities, different characteristics. And so he says, be wise as serpents, and you could use that quality to do good, to spread the gospel. And that's what this verse is about. To spread the gospel, be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. And then in Mark chapter 16, Jesus says that everybody who follows him will take up serpents. He doesn't say destroy serpents, but take up serpents. Take up serpents like Moses lifted up the serpent on the pole in the wilderness. He called his followers to heal others, to heal the sick. And then he says, take up serpents. So I think right now it is clear that the meaning of the snake, of the serpent, is very ambiguous. Is on one side evil, the devil, and on the other side it is healing. It is Jesus himself. But this is exactly the same with the symbol of the lion. So on one hand, the lion is Jesus, the Lion of Judah. A lot of people immediately link the lion to Jesus. However, the Bible also says that the devil is like a roaring lion who devours everything. So there's again this ambiguity. On one side, something symbolizes evil. On the other side, it symbolizes good. It symbolizes the devil. It symbolizes God. It symbolizes Satan. It symbolizes Jesus. It symbolizes death. It symbolizes life. That is because those animals, they have power. They're powerful animals, and you could use power to do evil or to do good. But it's not like everything about it is evil or everything about it is good. It's also with people. Human beings, we are powerful creatures actually. We could use our power to do evil or to do good, but it's not like someone is completely evil or completely good. That's not it. People can have good qualities, but also evil qualities. Jesus and Satan are both being symbolized by the serpent as well as by the lion. This is the same with the concept of light. The Bible says that Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. But then in another verse, Jesus says, I am the light. So the fact that Satan disguises himself as an angel of light doesn't mean that the concept of light in itself is evil. No, because Jesus is light. And Jesus is God, and God is good. So I think it's important to understand that the devil always tries to imitate God. It's the same with blessing and cursing. You can use words to bless someone or to curse someone. But the using of words in itself is not something evil. It is about what you do with it. It is about the context. And so it's the same with the serpent, with the lion, with light, with words. It all depends on the context. It can either be used for evil or for good. It can either symbolize the devil or God or Jesus. Then you might think like, okay, maybe it's a translation thing. Maybe in the original text, when the serpent was in the context of something good, then it would be another word than when the serpent would be in the context of something evil. So let's take a look at that. When we look at the Hebrew word for serpent, when Moses put the serpent on a pole, we get the Hebrew word Nachash. Then when we look at Genesis, the serpent who deceived Eve is the same word, Nachash. Okay, so maybe then in the New Testament it's different, with the Greek text. So when we look at the text of Matthew, in which Jesus calls us to be wise as serpents, then the Greek word for serpent is ophis. When we look at the text of John, when Jesus says that he must be lifted up like the serpent in the desert, in the wilderness, then again it's the word ophis. When we look at 2 Corinthians, where it says that the serpent deceived Eve, then again it's the word ophis. So as well in the original Hebrew text as in the original Greek text, we see that there is no distinction between like the good serpent and the evil serpent. It's the same thing. To conclude this story is that the serpent is an ambiguous symbol. It could symbolize good as well as evil. So now let's get into the Jungian perspective. What did Carl Jung say about the serpent? Carl Jung said that the serpent symbolizes the shadow of people. So the shadow is actually the opposite of your ego. So the ego is the image that you have of yourself, the idea that you have of yourself, that is in the conscious. And in the unconscious, there is the opposite of the ego, that is the shadow. And the shadow is everything that you think you are not. Everything that you even might hate. It's often that you actually hate the qualities of your own shadow. When you see it in other people, it actually triggers you. It's because it's your own shadow. People do have a blind spot for their own shadow. And that causes problems, because then they eventually will become their own enemy. They will become the very thing that they think they're not. And how does this work? Well, you see it, for example, with Antifa. Antifa, they think that they're the opposite of fascists. They are actually doing the exact thing that the fascists did back then in the 20th century. They're against freedom of speech. They are in favor of using violence to your opponents. They're clothed in black and they're all covered up. They're very aggressive. So they think they are the opposite of fascists, but because this is their shadow and because they are unaware of it, they actually have become the very thing that they oppose. It's the same with the whole anti-racism thing, with the whole Black Lives Matter movement, that those people are so anti-racism that they actually have become racist themselves. It's also with these movements of Nazism and communism, in which the people try to save the world, in which they try to save humanity, in which they try to be so good that they actually don't realize that in the process of becoming so good, they actually have become extremely evil, because they started murdering people. And then you become a mass murderer. And then you become the very thing that you actually oppose. It's because they are unaware of their shadow. But when you are aware of it, then you won't become that very thing. Then you are warned. And Carl Jung said that we need to integrate our shadow. We need to pick up that snake, You know, like I said before, the snake, when it is underground, when it's in the unconscious, when it's in the dark, when you are unaware of it, then it can actually harm you. But when you lift up that snake, like Moses did, like Jesus was lifted up, then it becomes something with healing properties. Then it becomes life. Then it becomes something positive, something good. And that's what Jung said. You need to integrate your shadow. So you need to take up this serpent, this shadow, and you have to make it conscious. You have to shine a light on it. You have to look it in the eye, just like Moses lifted up that serpent. And when you become aware of your shadow, when you integrate your shadow, then you become whole, then you become full. Because most people are only aware of half of themselves. They're only aware of the part that is conscious. They're only aware of their ego. But there is so much more. And when you integrate your shadow, then you actually get to know yourself. You shine a light on the darkness and the darkness will disappear. You will lift up that serpent. So Jung's take on the serpent and the shadow and integrating of the shadow is a psychological approach to what is actually already in the Bible. And to me, that is very interesting. So I hope you learned something. I hope you liked this video. Please like and subscribe. If you have more ideas about the symbolism of the snake, please leave it in the comments below. And for now, keep reading, guys.